Well, I get to introduce Chuck Berendes. I'm so excited. So today's speaker is Chuck Berendes. He lives just a few blocks from here. I met him and his young family in 2010 when I first moved to La Crosse. We had bought the vacant house next door. I got to know Chuck and his family in bits and pieces over time. His wife, Polly, said that he was an immigration attorney for Catholic Charities. But Chuck said he was a construction worker, at least on Fridays. Turns out he was both. Here's a man who helped those who were stuck on their path to being legal in the eyes of the law while on Fridays and weekends doing construction and raising 3 wonderful children. And he borrowed my truck, which was to me a way of having a bond of sorts, a connection to this fascinating person. Along the way, Chuck helped a close friend of mine get straightened out on several difficult immigration issues. That friend is doing more than fine now, in no small part due to Chuck's outsized way of caring enough to make a difference. Chuck received his law degree from St. Thomas School of Law in Minneapolis. He was hired by Catholic Charities in the Crosse and started the immigration program there. For nearly a decade, while building that immigration program, he assisted in the creation of the Warming Center, where we volunteer in La Crosse, and in Wausau, and the Sojourner House in Eau Claire. Since 2018, Chuck has been working as an attorney at Pittman Pittman law offices, focused almost entirely on immigration law. His caseload centers on family-based immigration, naturalization cases, and more. In addition to his family, Chuck has 8 chickens, and he's had a beard for more than 20 years. And before you come up, Chuck, we've been doing our choir rehearsals for the concert this afternoon, and there's a quote on the wall from St. Francis of Assisi. When I saw it, I thought, oh, that's Chuck. He who works with his hands and his head and his heart is an artist. Please welcome my friend, the artist, Chuck Berendes.
Good morning. It's working. All right. So I have 20 minutes, which I kind of give this talk a lot, and this is the shortest one I've ever given. So we'll stick to the greatest hits, I think. There's a couple things that I thought of actually just now while we were watching the video, and some of this is maybe kind of obvious. One thing that bugs me, I guess, is this when people kick around this term of illegals or illegal immigrants. It's not accurate. People don't become illegal because they violated some sort of law. If you were speeding in your car this morning to get here, you didn't become an illegal driver, although you broke the law. So I think it's inaccurate, and also it's just meant to divide people. So I don't use that term, and I'd encourage you not to use that term as well. And there was a couple little thoughts that I hadn't planned on, because I didn't know if I was going to have time, but I think they're kind of, before I get into the nuts and bolts of immigration law history, just a couple stories, I guess, that have motivated me or put some perspective on things for me. It was probably, 10 years ago or a little bit more. I was in Sparta meeting with this woman who had an immigration concern, and she was 26 years old, and she was like this tall, and she had a little kid with her, and she Spanish was her. She was from Mexico, but Spanish was her second language because she spoke an indigenous language. My Spanish is not great, but neither was hers. And then we were working, so there was her child, which I felt bad about, but there was no one else there, so we were kind of muddling through this. And I asked her, "How long did it take you to get to Sparta?" And she said 6 months. I was like, that seems like a really long time. And she said, I had to walk to Texas. Oh, she's from El Salvador, not Mexico. She walked the length of Mexico to get to Texas to go directly to Sparta because there was a job for her. So I don't know if you can imagine this, but like little kids aren't growing up in Central America being like, someday I'm going to live in Sparta, Wisconsin. But they become aware not of the possibility of a job, but the reality of a specific job, and make that effort to get all the way there. And so when we hear these, depictions of immigrants as criminals, I think it's important to remember that lazy people don't walk 1,800 miles to get a job in a factory in Sparta. The other thing is a lot of times there's this perception that immigrants are stealing jobs or stealing things that would otherwise go to Americans. And I think that that's also inaccurate. My mom grew up on a dairy farm outside of Hoka, Minnesota, and she was the oldest and had 5 brothers. My mom was a nurse. Her next brother was an attorney. Her next brother went to college and worked in business. Her next brother also went to college, worked in a cheese factory here in Wisconsin. The next brother stayed on the farm, and her youngest brother worked for a long time on a large dairy farm in southeastern Minnesota. And so my uncle, who stayed on the farm, and his wife had 1 child, my cousin, who's now a large animal vet. So in that span, it went, as a small family farm with 6 kids on the farm to a small family farm with 1 kid on the farm who's now gone. Because farmers want their kids to go to college too. And so if you go to Hoka, or my dad's from Norwalk, and you look around, there's not like lines of young men just sort of milling around, wishing they had a job, but refusing to milk cows. Those guys are gone. They went to college. And so immigrants are filling that void. In the Catholic Church in Norwalk, where my dad's from, there's a window of somebody with my last name. So 130 years ago, that person who had come from Germany and was milking cows scraped together enough money when they're building this church that they put his name on a window. 100 years later, people in that exact same building doing the exact same thing, but speaking Spanish instead of German. And some people, I don't know, that's really frightening to them. And it's like, we've been doing this all along. This is how it works. So I think it's important to remember that for all of our history, people have come to the United States maybe for some of the kind of patriotic reasons that we think of freedom. But I think in large part, people have been driven by the same factors: economic reasons and safety. And was the case for my family. I would expect it's the case for many of your families, and it's the case now. If people could, everyone that I meet would probably have stayed in their home country. It's a huge sacrifice to come to the United States, to give up everything that you know: your food, your music, your community, your customs, leave your family. A lot of people will never see their moms and dads again. And you think that that's ancient history, but it's not. The immigration system is very challenging. It takes a super long time. It restricts travel during that time. And I've met lots of people whose dads pass away, moms pass away, grandma and grandpa, before they're able to get back. So it's a huge sacrifice. And I don't think that we understand that very well. Okay, so those are my quick stories. Now I think I have 10 minutes to explain all of immigration law history, and we're going to do it. And I made a little handout. I don't know, because it's riveting. You can share with your friends. Except now I gave all my handouts away. Can I have one back? Shoot, thank you. So I really am going to tell you pretty much all of immigration law history of the United States in the next 4 minutes, because it's easy, because the first 100 years there were no rules. So when and if you hear people say, well, my ancestors immigrated legally, if they came before 1875, which there was a lot of immigration before then, there were no rules. So that's basically like saying the sky is blue. Congratulations. In 1790, I think it's sort of interesting to think of, before there was a United States, there wasn't a United States. And before there was a United States, there weren't laws in the United States because there was no United States. So in 1790, people started thinking, how do you become a citizen of the United States? And so that was the first law, but that really didn't have anything to do with who could come. It just was establishing the rules of naturalization. The first immigration laws were restrictions, and that was started in 1875, and you could see there exclusion of convicts, prostitutes. There was a whole law excluding people from China. You can see item C there, another list of, and that was the language that they were using at the time. Persons likely to become a public charge is still very important in immigration law. So all family-based immigration, you have to demonstrate that your relative will not likely rely on the government for support. And then D, they started being, and I think we were kind of imagined this at Ellis Island and all this stuff about checking for contagious diseases, and that's still a reality. So for 120 some years, there was no rules, and then there was a very limited set of exclusions. So my family was able to come to the United States not because of some great merit, but because they were not convicts, prostitutes, anarchists, lunatics. So they snuck in, like probably many of your families. Then in the 19-teens and 20s, there was the creation of this quota system, which maybe you've heard of that before, but they were trying to maintain the ethnic makeup of the United States at that time. So like if 17% of the census or whatever was from Germany, then they were going to allow 17% of immigrants from Germany and try to maintain this ethnic makeup, which it's an idea. And then in 1952 is when the Immigration and Nationalities Act, which is the law that we function under now, was codified. And of course, it's like really expanded since then, but that we're still functioning in that system, which defines how you could come to the United States. So basically there's family-based immigration, employment-based, and then there's some kind of miscellaneous things like asylum, the diversity lottery, but the big factors would be family and employment. And so then on the, oh, this printed weird. Did it print on both sides? Yeah. Okay, excellent. So if you look at the back side, or has the State Department on the top. So if you want to file a petition for a family member, there's no numerical limits on the number of immediate family members that could come to the United States. So like spouses of U.S. citizens or minor children of U.S. citizens or parents of adult U.S. citizens. There's no limits on those groups. But if you go to what's called the preference categories, so you can see on the sheet there where it says family-sponsored preferences, and then it lists them out. Unmarried sons and daughters of U.S. citizens, spouses and children, and unmarried sons and daughters of permanent residents or people with green cards. And it breaks down all the preference categories. So if we look at the fourth preference category, just for fun, brothers and sisters of adult U.S. citizens, and then you go to the chart above that, and we'll look at the column that's titled Mexico and draw over from the fourth preference category to Mexico, where it says 30th April 2001. So what that's telling us is, this is called the Visa Bulletin. It's published every month. I looked it up this morning. This is for this month. So what that's telling us, if I had a brother in Mexico and I filed a petition for him on or before April 30th, 2001, he's eligible now to apply for a green card to come to the United States. That is the appropriate response too. The other thing is the Visa Bulletin doesn't move in real time. So like next month, it doesn't necessarily move a month forward. It could be frozen, or if you're really lucky, it could go backwards. So this wait isn't probably like 25 years, it's probably more like 30 or 35 years. So when people talk about, the average immigrant, if you let one immigrant in, I've heard like ridiculous numbers, like they'll bring 17 family members. It's not mathematically possible. You'd have to live to be like 400 years old. So that if you ever hear that one, that's also not true. I think I'm almost out of time, but I'll give you one more little nugget that you could be annoyed about. So, have you ever heard of this term anchor baby? So the theory of the anchor baby is babies born in the United States are U.S. citizens, because that's what our rules say. I'm a U.S. citizen because I was born here in Wisconsin. I didn't apply for that. My mom didn't apply for me. I was just lucky and born here. So if you have a baby in the United States, that baby is a citizen. And we just talked about family preference categories, so children can petition for their parents. The restriction is children can't petition for their parents until they turn 21. And if the mother shuffled into the United States in the dark to have a baby, she's been in the United States without authorization for 21 years. And there's no process by which she can get a green card unless she exits the United States, at which time she'll trigger a 10-year penalty and won't be able to come back for 10 years. So that's a 31-year plan for the anchor baby. So that one's also, I think, a little phony, but people like to kick that around. So I think I'm out of time.